Lord, we just ask you to open these boys' ears and open my mouth so we can do your will. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Alright, as Mr. Jerry said, my name is Edward Cowles. I know pretty much everybody here, but for those of you who don't, I've been a trapper here for 4 years. I'm now a freshman at Auburn. I graduated from St. Michael last year. This is one of my favorite events. I love coming back to this. It's really a great thing that y'all do for the community. And so I was very honored when I was asked to talk to y'all today because I want to help y'all be better Catholic men. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to try to tell y'all a little bit of what I know. So the title of this talk is called Move. In order to accomplish anything in our lives, we have to move. You guys have already accomplished something pretty great today. You all made it out here. I mean, nobody's going to give you a trophy or a pat on the back for getting out here. I mean, sorry if you were expecting one. But it took a lot to get out here. You had to wake up, you had to brush your teeth, hopefully. You had to get in your car, get picked up by somebody. You had to drive out here. You had to sit out here and listen to Father Steve, and now you're sitting out here listening to me. All these little things in a combination got you to where you are today. We make choices all the time about whether or not to move, either physically or metaphorically. So say you got a big test coming up, and you can either make the move to study, or you can make the move to sit and watch TV. You have to make that choice. Nobody's going to make that choice for you. We got any football players in here? We're just kind of people who play sports, basketball, cross country, a lot of people, most of y'all, right? So think about if all you did for football was you just sat in a room and watched film. And then you went out and tried to win a game. How many of you think you would win that game? Nobody, right? Because you got to move. You have to practice. You have to take those skills. Watching film is important, but you have to take those skills and you have to put them to work. You have to move. And so I'm saying all of this because these lessons about movement apply just as much to our faith life as they do to our secular life, as they apply to football or your schoolwork and all that kind of stuff. So I want everybody to close their eyes real quick, and I want all of you to think about the best Christmas gift that you have ever gotten. Just put it in your head, you wake up on Christmas, see the sun under the tree, you were just so dang excited. All right, everybody can open their eyes now. I don't want to know exactly, what you're thinking of, but I know for me, probably my most memorable Christmas gift when I was writing this was I can think of when I was probably 10. We got this 2-person kayak, big thing, is orange. It wouldn't even fit in my house. I had to sit on our porch. And I just remember on Christmas Day, it was freezing cold, probably like 20 degrees. And all I wanted to do was go jump in the water and put that thing in. I wanted to put it to use, so I wanted to ride around with my friends. I just wanted to have a ton of fun with it. And that's probably how you feel about your gift too. If you got a really cool gift, you don't just want to put it up on your shelf or only use it some of the time or not tell anybody that you have it. You want to go tell all your friends, hey, look at this cool thing I've got. You want to use it every day. You want to get as much out of it as you can. And so we have all been given a really great gift in our life, and that's our faith and the love that Jesus gives us. And so why do we treat our faith this way? Why do we put it on a shelf? Why do we not tell people that we have it? Why do we not allow our faith to move so that it can shape us and help us grow? And so maybe you're out here sitting and you're saying, well, Edward, I'm already doing enough. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm making moves to try to allow my faith to move. And I'm here to tell you that that's probably not true. And so we're going to read a little Bible story real quick. Down, open this up. Read Matthew chapter 2, verse 1. Does anybody know what story this is before we get started? No? Okay. Well, you'll find out. After Jesus had been born in Bethlehem of Judea during the reign of King Herod, wise men traveled from the east and arrived in Jerusalem, inquiring every year. And sometimes with Bible stories, we tend to kind of tame them down. When in reality, if you think about this story, it's pretty crazy that this even happened. So let's think about the context. And so we talk about these men, these wise men. But let's think about what these guys really were. So the first key important thing to know about these guys is they're not scientists. in order to ascertain that this star was not something that was actually supposed to be there, they used a little combination of astronomy, which is where they would take star charts that they drew by hand and look at the stars and try to ascertain where their position was, and astrology, which is like space magic, where you look at where the stars are and you say, okay, this is what that means. So not only were they not scientists, these men were not Jewish. As you heard in the story, they looked to the prophecy in the Old Testament, which would have been written in Hebrew. And these men were not Jewish. They're from the East, probably from somewhere like Iraq, Iran, maybe even as far away as India or China. So they were not natural Hebrew speakers by birth. They obviously were rich and probably studied Hebrew, but so they were not fluent Hebrew speakers. So they had to translate this prophecy to their own language. These men, because they weren't from Judea, they had to travel very far across deserts. There's robbers in the desert, the threat of dehydration, sandstorms. It's just not a very safe place where you want to take a trip, especially when you're on a camel and it's going to take you about 3 to 4 weeks. These men are also wealthy leaders, They have the money to do this. They have the money to give these gifts to Jesus, which means they're not traveling alone. They're traveling with servants, probably members of their family, and probably a lot of their possessions, which makes the threat of robbers and death even more dangerous. So we're going to stop the story right here because we can already take our first lesson from this. We're going to get 4 lessons today, so try to remember, and we'll go back over them at the end. So even though I did kind of overly dramatize the context of that a bit, it's still kind of crazy that the wise men followed through with this plan, but we can learn a lot from their example. And so the first lesson we're going to learn today is that we have to move even if we're not sure where the Lord is going to take us, I'm sure, these guys, they're human. They have doubts. They're not really sure what they're doing. And so at some point, they're going across the desert. One of the guys has to look at one of his buddies or just at least think to himself and be like, is this the right thing to do, Think about all the places they could have made an error and this not could have been happening. I mean, they could have had an error in their star charts. They could have had an error in how they interpreted what it meant. They could have had an error in translating the prophecy. And so even if they had done all that correctly, they're still risking their lives to go visit a baby king who's not going to remember them, who is not even in their religion, and it's not in their kingdom. But they still went. They had that faith. They knew that this was something special, and they took that chance, and they were rewarded by getting to see the face of Jesus. So I got a little personal example of this, of moving and not sure where it's going to take you. So a little story about me. I tried out for the St. Michael football team in 8th grade. St. Michael was just opening up. Man, I've always wanted to play football. I'm going to play. So I worked out the whole summer. And when the end of summer came around, there were also like only 20 guys, about 25 probably, that were trying out for the team. I was like, you need a lot more than 20 guys to have a football team. I was like, I'm going to make it. This is awesome. I'm going to be a high school football player in 8th grade. Can't wait to do this. And so, if you talk to Coach Phelps, he'll tell you this is not true, but it is true because I was the only person cut from the football team that year. It's a little bit funny. It's funny now. It was not funny then. I actually have a very funny memory. People in here know Jack Donald? Yeah, some of y'all do. His mom used to drive me home from those football practices because I was like 14. I couldn't drive yet. And that whole car ride home from the Daphne YMCA, it's about 30 minutes to my house, I sat in the back of her car and just sobbed on that day. And it was just dead silent. Nobody else said a word on that car ride, it's funny now. It was not funny at the time, but I laugh about it now. And so I was just so upset. And Coach Phelps actually came to my house and talked to me. He was like, Edward, you're little. This time I was probably about 5'4", maybe 100 pounds soaking wet. And so he was like, I don't want to put you out there. You're going to get hurt. But he was like, if you go play Christ King football for a year and you like it and you want to come out next year, we'll be glad to have you. I was like, okay. So that's what I'm going to do. So I played Christ King football that fall for Austin Maloney's dad, Nathan Long's dad, and I absolutely hated it. It was so miserable. I was not good. In fact, I think there was one game where I was not playing well, and Nathan Long's dad yelled at me if I wanted to be there, and I looked him dead in the eye and I said no. And I did not play very much for the rest of that game, nor for the rest of the season, but that was perfectly okay with me. So I hated it, and so that fall ended, and I played basketball, and then I played soccer, but then summer rolled around, and I just didn't know what to do, because I had never been, like, gone a season without playing a sport, and it was looking like I wasn't going to do anything in that fall. Excuse me. All right, there we go. And so I was like, what am I going to do? And my mom was like, well, they need runners for the cross country team. You used to run when you were little, you loved it. And I was like, I don't know, I don't know if that's really what I want to do. And she's like, just go out and give it a try. So I went out, went to practice, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this. What if I end up hating it, just like I hated football? But I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a chance, go to one practice. Went to one practice, and 4 years later, I've won a state championship. I've been captain of the cross country team, and I ran for 4 years, made some really great friends, and it totally changed my life, I will tell you that. And so that's just another way to say, when we trust in God, I had to have faith in Him that I was making the right move there. I had no idea where it was going to take me, but He used me to do wonderful things with those guys and win state championships and run well and make really good friendships with people I might not have ever been friends with if I hadn't done that. And so the second lesson that we can take away from the story of our three kings is that our moves may not always lead us where we think they are going to. So we kind of cut off the story with the context of the story about halfway when they're making the trip. So the kings, they've made the trip. They made it to Bethlehem. Somehow, by the glory of God, they didn't get killed. They didn't die of dehydration. They didn't get robbed. And so they're in Bethlehem, and they're trying to figure out where a king would be. So they're following the star, and it takes them to a stable. So they go inside. There's animals all over the place. There's dirt everywhere. And inside, there's like this little shepherd family, and there's a baby laying in a feeding trough. And so once again, we have to think about those guys. They're human. And so we have to feel like, what are they going to do in this situation? Obviously, if it was us and we walked in on that, we'd probably be like, oh, this is not where a king would be. But their response to this is they laid down, face down in the dirt, and paid him homage. They paid their respects to him, this little baby. And so we think about what they might have been thinking about in this situation. And once again, we say, they had to have been having doubts about what they were doing. I mean, nothing in this story so far sounds like a king, Kings don't reside in stables. They don't lay in hay troughs. They don't hang out with animals. They don't look like this. And so we can often feel the same way in our lives, We're human. We love to make plans. I know I'm a big planner. But either one thing, shows up and it throws the whole plan out of whack, or we realize what we had been planning for, it wasn't that great and it's not what we're meant to do. Once again, I have a little personal story of this. So I showed up to college my first day. I was studying aerospace engineering, and I thought that I was going to graduate in 4 years, and I was going to go work at NASA, and I was going to build rockets. I was like, man, this is going to be awesome. Can't wait to do this. This is going to be so much fun. So I show up my first day of class. I've got a class, and it's called Intro to Aerospace Engineering. Man, this is going to be fun. I can't wait to take this class. This class is 45 minutes long, and for 45 minutes, my professor sits down and yells at us about how we all think we're going to go work at NASA, but in reality, we're going to spend 15 years designing airplane seats, and we're going to hate it. And I was just in shock, because first off, I've never had a teacher treat me like this before. I didn't even know teachers were allowed to do this. And I was just like, is this true? Like, this has totally rocked my worldview of what aerospace engineers do. And so I went home, and I just, sat on my bed, and I was like, he's right. This is what kind of aerospace engineering is. You think you're going to go do this, but in reality, you have to work your way kind of up to that. And so I was like, okay, well, that just kind of gave me a little reality check, but I'm still studying aerospace engineering. This is what I want to do. So I keep going on with the class, and every time we do something, I'm like, man, I don't like doing this. This is not what I want to do. And every time we do it, he's like, yeah, you're going to end up doing a lot of these in your life. You're going to do a lot of these. I'm like, man, that does not sound fun. Ooh, excuse me. And so halfway through the semester, I sat down with myself and I was like, okay, I don't like anything I'm doing in this class. He's kind of already told me what my future is going to look like in this career. Is this what I really want to do? And so I had to totally change my major halfway through the semester and revamp my entire plan, which I really didn't want to do because I do love planning and I loved how, I had planned out every single course I was going to take for all 4 years and exactly where I was going to try to intern. all this different stuff. And this totally just destroyed that entire plan. But so I changed my major. I changed it to physics. And now I'm in physics, and I love it. I love every single thing that I do. Every day when I go to class, I'm excited. Even the stuff that other people think is boring, I think it's really cool. And so that's just kind of how, I had this big plan, and I thought I was doing the right thing. But it was important that I started in aerospace engineering, I think, because I had to see firsthand that it wasn't what I was supposed to do. I had to actually go through it and be like, okay, this isn't for me, because otherwise, I probably would have wondered oh, would I like doing that, blah blah blah. But now I know that that's not for me. And so the same is kind of true for these kings. They couldn't really understand what was happening. They just thought they were seeing a worldly king. They weren't understanding they were seeing a universal king. But they trusted God. They're like, okay, I don't really know what's going on here. And they kind of took a step back from the situation. They're like, Lord, I'm just going to let you do with this what you want. And then they kind of realized, they're like, oh, something big is happening here. And sometimes that will happen to us, and that's what happened with me, and I hope someday it'll happen with you. So now that we know why we should move, we've had our first 2 lessons, how can we do it? This talk would be kind of pointless if all I did was stand up here and be like, you have to move. And then I went and sat down, and you'd be like, okay, he didn't tell us what to do, so what am I supposed to do about that? And so, we all want to be better Christians, we want to be better Catholics, and so the best way to do that, we have to build a relationship with God, and that's by building ourselves up through prayer. Whenever you learn to do something, you don't start by just jumping into the hardest part of it right away, You don't learn math by starting to learn calculus, you don't learn to walk by running a marathon. If you did, you would fail, and then you would say, I can't do this, and you would totally give up. And so sometimes we even learn to do something by learning something super small that's not even really a part of that thing. I remember that first day I showed up to cross country practice and we stretched for 30 minutes. And I was like, this is dumb. When are we going to run? Because that's all I thought the cross country was about. But you have to learn to stretch and let your body recover. Just like in football, you have to lift weights. Even though when you go out on a football field, you don't start bench pressing as a wide receiver position. You have to be strong so that you can block and you can run and catch the ball and help your teammates and try to win. And so the key in learning these kinds of things is the same thing in learning to pray better, and that's starting small. I know for me, one thing that I've had a problem with is, my mind is always going. It's very easy for me to focus on a task, but if I'm not doing anything, I'm just thinking. And so when I'm praying, it's hard for me to sit still and just be silent and keep those kind of thoughts out of my head. And so I had to practice, and I would just sit down throughout my day, and I would just try to just be still and not think about anything for 30 seconds. I'm just going to just sit. And then after about 15-30 seconds, I would just go on with whatever I was doing. And over time, it became easier for me to quiet my thoughts and just enter that prayerful mode. And so I moved the time up, and I moved the time up, and I moved the time up. And so while at first I was like, what is 15 seconds going to do? It's not important. This one little exercise has helped me be able to sit down and really get something out of prayer. That's a problem. People say, well, I don't get anything out of praying. Well, it's because, you're not in the right mindset. You're not focused. You're not really doing it right. But that's because you don't know how. So you have to teach yourself how to do it right in order to be able to do it right. And so that's where our fourth and final step of the day, lesson of the day, comes from one last personal experience of mine, and this kind of relates to how we can be better in our faith life. So when I was running cross country, I got better. We would practice every summer. So every summer there would be some new kids that would come out, and it was always the first week of summer practice was my favorite. We would always get 1 or 2 kids that would show up, and they didn't really know a lot about cross country. And we would run out of St. Michael, and the road was 2 miles long, so you ran a mile out and a mile out, and then you ran 2 miles back to get back to the school. So we'd show up that first day and we'd run 4 miles. We'd run all the way about, we'd run all the way back. And there would always be a couple new kids that would just sprint those first 2 miles. And they'd get out to that turn, and then they would have to walk those last 2 miles back. And I would laugh on the inside, not in public. But it was just funny to me because, they didn't really know what they were doing. And so it was always interesting because